Chapter 18, Placebo Christianity and a Clash of Teen Culture. I found myself sitting in a coffee shop with a group of men once a week reading the book Crazy Love by Francis Chan and discussing it. It's a great book by a former pastor of a megachurch in Southern California. In his writing, Chan wrestles with the assumptions and paradigms we've built in America about what church is, what it should be doing, and how people inside of it should operate. The premise is that if we are crazy in love with Jesus, then we would act in ways that others would think are crazy, particularly when it came to helping the poor and the needy. I remember one section where he talked about buying a bag of groceries to give to a poor family and then driving around his neighborhood for hours because he honestly didn't know anyone who might need groceries. He had thousands of people who attended his church at the time. He didn't know anyone poor. What an indictment regarding the disconnect between the church and the poor. One can read on Chan's website that he is now bridging that gap. In May of 2010, he left Cornerstone to work directly in mission with the poor locally and internationally. He's also the chancellor and founder of Eternity Bible College and serves on the board of directors for Children's Hunger Fund, an international humanitarian aid foundation to assist the poor, and on the board for World Impact, an inner-city missions organization dedicated to planting churches among the urban poor in America. I thought it odd, as we read Chan's book and sipped our $4 coffees in a cozy north side, trendy, artsy coffee house, how disconnected we all were. I watched while week after week the dynamic and capable leader of the study tried to get the guys to engage and interact and go deep with each other, to no avail. We were just as removed as Chan was. Many of our guys talked about how they wished they could go on a mission trip someday, or wished they could get more involved making a real difference against the forces of poverty, loneliness, hopelessness, and degradation. I invited them to come on down and help serve a meal, and I would introduce them to some characters. No one took me up on the offer. The funny thing was, I came to feel like we all thought we were growing in Christ and spiritual maturity because we were doing our small group Bible study thing. It felt like placebo Christianity to me. A placebo is that little sugar pill that drug researchers give a test group telling them that it's actual medicine. They do this just to see if the psychological benefits of thinking you are getting the real thing is as effective as the real thing itself. That's when it hit me that I think we've created a Christian subculture where we believe that if we sit every week in a small group reading and discussing the latest book, it's the real thing in spiritual growth. So agreeing with the book's ideas and premises became the important part, not doing them. It felt like a placebo. James chapter 1, verse 22 says, "But prove yourselves doers of the word and not merely hearers who delude themselves." After 8 weeks or so, the study ended. I told the leader I was bowing out. I felt like too much of a maverick, and I just don't seem to fit the Christian world anymore. I couldn't feel like I was growing simply because I joined a small group and I agreed with a book. Maybe I've just grown tired of deluding myself for so long. I couldn't help but contrast our placebo book study with the actions later shown by some teens. On a Sunday, sometime afterward, a group of high school students associated with Young Life came down to our church to help cook and serve a meal to the homeless. The Young Life leaders were all former or current students at Whitworth University, dedicating their lives to making a difference in the youth culture around them. Usually, they gathered to build relationships, have some recreation, study the Bible, or talk about Christian ethics. This particular day, they chose to add a service project for the poor to their schedule. They found us through a connection with another Young Life from Ione, a small town almost 2 hours' drive north. That small town group had been coming down for over a year. These new students were fantastic workers and were totally taken aback by how kind and thankful the homeless population turned out to be. Salvation Army had recently dropped off a bunch of blankets for us to distribute, so we put one brave young man to work, walking through the crowd and asking who needed a blanket. He beamed as he felt the pleasure of God while distributing the needed goods. It was great to be able to help, and I could tell they really appreciated it, but it also felt so small, like a single blanket wasn't much compared with all the need they really had. We agreed. But many times that's where it starts. The food and the blanket build trust. The trust builds confidence, which leads to an invitation to deeper talk, and many times that deeper talk leads us to Jesus. The students and their leaders came out after serving the food and sat among the homeless, talking and sharing stories and learning what they could of life for those on the edges of society. The most touching moment came when two young runaway girls, who are fellow students from a different high school, came through the line to get a meal. The two runaways had come to our meal last week for the first time and felt bold enough to attend church earlier that morning. They'd been kicked out of the last church they tried to visit when they wandered over to the lost and found table and rummaged through the apparel left there. An usher booted them for that crime. It was a huge step for them to try church again. One of them informed us that they wanted to keep coming to church. "I went to your prayer loft area during the service and asked God to come into me and take over," she said. "And you know what? I really felt him. It was like he was right here with me, and I could feel his warmth and love. I've never felt that ever before in my life," she beamed. We couldn't help but notice the contrast of youth culture. On one side of the counter stood high school students deeply loved by their families, living in secure homes, planning on going to college, active in after-school activities, offering their services to others out of their affluence and privilege. On the other side are two high school runaways, neglected and abused by their families, fighting to stay in school, living in poverty and hunger, comforting their own pain with drugs, alcohol, or sex. All the while, they gratefully accepted the meal and scurried off into the gym to eat. Both sets of teens were heard saying, "I felt God here today."